Good evening, everybody. William Barr, the president's nominee for Attorney General, on Capitol Hill today as his confirmation hearings began. Barr assured lawmakers he would display the impartiality that is in such short supply on the Judiciary Committee. But unlike Jeff Sessions, Barr making it clear he would not shy away from supporting the president, no matter the public outcry.
President Trump has sought no assurances, promises, or commitments from me of any kind, either express or implied, and I have not given him any, other than that I would run the department with professionalism and integrity. I will seek the advice of the career ethics personnel, but under the regulations, I make the decision as the head of the agency as to my own recusal. I think one of our major problems, as the president says, is that the immigration laws just have to be changed. I feel it is a critical part of border security that we need to have barriers on the border. We need a barrier system on the border.
Barr's answers impressing even some of the Democrats, namely Judiciary Committee ranking member Dianne Feinstein, who expects Barr to be confirmed easily.
I think the candidate is answering questions and I think doing well. And the questions cover a fairly wide range. These go on for hour after hour after hour. And so I think he's held up well.
It's a pretty easy road for him heading to confirmation.
Oh, I think so.
We discussed the reaction to the hearings, what to expect from the Attorney General to be. Republican strategist Ed Rollins, attorneys Harmeet Dillon, Greg Jarrett with us tonight. The national left-wing media long pushing the narrative that President Trump lacks support for the building of his border wall. New national polls show the exact opposite. The gaining support, the wall support is at an all-time high and rising quickly. Now is clearly the time to build it once and for all, ending the crisis on that border. We address the president's continued efforts to end the unending flow of deadly drugs, human trafficking, and criminal illegal aliens crossing our border. Congressman Sean Duffy joins us tonight. We'll be talking trade and what in the world we're going to do about the high tariffs of investigative journalist Sarah Carter on illegal immigration and a new caravan forming. Former Nevada State GOP Chair Amy Tarkanian with us tonight on the Republican Party's struggle with Mitt Romney and residual rhinos, it seems, almost everywhere. All of that here tonight. Our top story, President Trump's nominee for Attorney General, William Barr, spending nearly 9 hours on Capitol Hill, where he endured questioning from the Senate Judiciary Committee. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has our report tonight from Capitol Hill.
I will not be bullied into doing anything I think is wrong by anybody, whether it be editorial boards or Congress or the president.
From the outset, William Barr, the president's nominee to lead the Justice Department, said he will protect the special counsel investigation.
The country needs a credible resolution to these issues.
Barr said he saw no chance to shut down for cause, and he pledged to make the final Mueller report as public as possible.
I am going to try to get the information out there consistent with these regulations.
Are there any circumstances that would cause you to terminate the investigation?
Bob Mueller could only be terminated for good cause, and frankly, it's unimaginable to me that Bob would ever do anything that gave rise to good cause.
Other Democrats pressed Barr in a memo he wrote last year to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein that questioned whether the special counsel could bring an obstruction of justice case against the president for firing FBI Director James Comey.
If the president orders the Attorney General to halt criminal investigation for personal reasons, would that be prohibited under your theory?
I think it would be a breach of the president's duties to faithfully execute the law. It would be an abuse of power.
Barr also revealed that the president reached out to him about possibly joining his legal team in June 2017, where the limited conversation also turned to the special counsel.
He was interested in that, wanted to know, what I thought about, Mueller's integrity, and I said Bob is a straight shooter.
Barr served as Attorney General for Bush And at 68, Barr suggested he was a strong candidate because he didn't need the job.
I'm in a position in life where I can do the right thing and not really care about the consequences.
On reports, the FBI opened an investigation into whether the president was directed by Russia to fire Comey in May 2017. Barr said the Bureau appeared to operate largely unchecked.
Are there rules about how you can do counterintelligence investigations?
I believe there are, Mr. Chairman.
Been up one against the president. Are there any checks and balances?
Not outside the FBI.
On political bias at the FBI during the 2016 election, Barr called text messages between former agent Peter Strzok and former lawyer Lisa Page inappropriate.
I was shocked when I saw them.
Please get to the bottom of it. We're relying upon you to clean this place up.
And Barr pledged to investigate whether there was surveillance abuse during the 2016 campaign, when a warrant was obtained and renewed multiple times using the anti-Trump dossier campaign aid. Lou?
Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine Herridge. Barr will be back before the hearing committee, the Judiciary Committee, tomorrow morning, 9:30, for day 2 of his confirmation hearing. Well, joining me now, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst, Ed Rollins. Ed, your impressions of Barr and how he did today negotiating the Judiciary Committee, which, by the way, it is a joke that those people will be insisting on impartiality, a lack of bias, as they have put on one of the most horrible circuses in memory in the Kavanaugh hearings.
Barr was a superb attorney general when he served under the first President Bush. He was a very young man then, and he's gained a lot of experience since then. My sense is he performed extremely well today, and I think every answer he gave was a correct answer. He basically said that he made it very clear, he reported to the president that he would need preconceived notions. He argued the points of view that immigration law needed to be rewritten, but wouldn't be rewritten without the security on the wall. He's been through a lot of experience, and I think that's very important.
And I think the Dems, it was interesting because they backed off. They're obviously leery of tangling Kamala Harris and her usual nonsense. She didn't show up with that nonsense today because she's looking at a nominee who would, I think she understands that he deserves respect, and to treat him otherwise would create real problems for her instantly. So one of the things I was disturbed though by is that Barr said that he said all the right things as far as I was concerned about the barrier on the border, part of the larger issue of border security, the larger issue of immigration reform itself, stopping illegal immigration. I would have liked to have heard him say very clearly that there was no such, there was no independence issue here. The president brought him in to do a job. He understands the role of the president. When he said there's no checks on the FBI, outside the FBI, that's nonsense. The fact of the matter is, this president is that check on the FBI. He can clean that agency up and must ultimately do so through his attorney general agency, rancid, corrupt, toxic, from the top to the bottom of its leadership.
Barr has always, in his earlier service, always believed in the strong executive. He made it very clear today. He's part of the executive branch. Democrats don't believe that. I keep hearing them say it's the people's lawyer, not the lawyer of the president. He is appointed by the president to serve the country, and he will do that. And my sense is that I think he has to clean up the FBI. The FBI cannot clean itself up. And the first order, number one, needs to be to do that. Get the Mueller report taken care of.
If there would be any reason for this president to fire this attorney general, it certainly would be a failure to clean up the FBI, because this agency has destroyed itself.
No question about that. And it's back to the days of J. Edgar Hoover, which was one of the dark periods of our country and the dark periods of the FBI. So,
yeah, and I think he did very well. It's going to be interesting to see where we go from here. And, as Dianne Feinstein said, it's time to end these endless committee hearings and confirmation hearings because a bunch of two-bit senators want to get a little airtime. I mean, it's disgusting.
Well, there's no reason he can't finish tomorrow and basically be confirmed next week, and it just needs to be done that quickly.
The White House, in the midst of all of this president is governing the world's only superpower. Complicated, deeply complex, profoundly challenging. And right now, he doesn't appear to be getting help from anyone in the Senate. It doesn't seem to be getting much help from the House. It's an extraordinary period of time in which he has to contend with Robert Mueller and put up with all of this nonsense.
And the New York Times, the Washington Post, and every other mainstream media. The reality is that some of these people that are in the Senate and the House need to step forward and argue his points. And
how's he doing on border security and ending this nonsense from Pelosi and Schumer that they're not going to do anything to protect the nation and assure the safety of American citizens?
He's made his position very clear, and at this point in time, it's up to them to bring him a bill that has his $5.6 or $7 billion. 5.7. And when they do that, then he'll act on it. He's made that very clear. He doesn't need to be negotiating with himself. He doesn't need to be making points every day. They need the ball.
What about this bringing in moderate Democrats?
Well, it's not going to happen. I mean, I was there when we had coalitions. We had Southern Democrats who were boll weevils. We haven't had them since, and that was in the early '80s.
One more committee of 8, 16, or whatever that comes in. Grand bargains. I mean, this is the stuff of grandiose dreams of
And until Pelosi and Schumer basically decide they're going to play ball here, it's not going to happen.
IRS bringing back 60% of those furloughed without pay to get those tax refunds out. Moving ahead.
We need to keep moving the government forward, and anything they can do on that front is very positive.
All right. Ed, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Up next, the radical left refusing to negotiate border security with the president, but they sure had a lot to say today about the government shutdown.
We need to end the reckless Trump shutdown.
The pain the Trump shutdown is causing.
Let's reopen government.
People across the country are paying attention. They want it to end.
It is time to open this government.
This is not government working.
There's not a Democrat that wants to see $5 billion wasted on a partial payment on a wall.
The American people are overwhelmingly on our side. A good number of Republicans are on our side, and I think the movement is in our direction.
Well, what an objective viewpoint from Senator Schumer. It turns out the facts suggest the exact opposite. No surprise there, right? We'll take that up and more right after this quick break. Congressman Sean Duffy joins us here. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
No wall, then no deal. As the longest shutdown.
ABC News, Washington Post. Finding 42% of Americans surveyed want a wall on our southern border. That's up from 34% just last year. And this comes as the radical Dems refuse to attend a meeting today with the president to talk about border security. Reportedly, 6 of the Dems include Stephanie Murphy, Lou Correa, Charlie Crist, David Scott, Abigail Spanberger, and Scott Peters. That's right. None of the leadership was invited. Joining me now, Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. He's a member of the House Financial Services Committee. It is great to have you with us. And let's start with the shutdown. I don't know that I've ever heard of a White House inviting members without their leadership. What do you make of that?
Well, I've heard of that, Lou, but I've never heard of members being invited to the White House and turn in the office. I was in Congress for 6 years with Barack Obama. Never invited me to the Oval Office. And
he
if
didn't
he had,
invite
I would have
you?
gone. Never.
Sure.
I know, Lou, but I can't imagine that these members wouldn't go over and sit down and have a conversation with the president. And what this shows is they've dug their heels in so far, Lou. They don't care about the migrants that are dying on this dangerous journey to our border, or the sexual assaults of young girls, the rapes that take place with little girls, or the drugs that are flowing into my communities, or the gang members, or the convicts, or the terrorists that come into our country and don't keep us. They don't care. They care about a political win because they hate President Trump, and it's sad. It's too bad.
It's, as I've said on this broadcast repeatedly, there's only one that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer do want to deny the president the construction of that wall. it would be because that is the only major promise he made in 2016 that he has not already fulfilled. We know
that's right.
That if he fulfills it, in my opinion, he will win anyway. But he would be absolutely unstoppable in 2020 if he succeeds in bringing that wall.
You're spot on. And I know your listeners know where you stand on the truth. But if you did know the truth, you said, should I believe Chuck and Nancy or should I believe Donald Trump? If you don't know who to believe, ask the men and women on the border, the ones that are charged with keeping us safe. And if you ask them, they say, no, no, no. We need a wall. We need more technology. We need boots. Donald Trump is absolutely right. And when Democrats say, well, you're racist, 52% of the Border Patrol is Hispanic. So, and I think the more that the Border Patrol get out there and talk about what they're up against to keep America safe, the more America goes, okay, I see you guys as partisan. I see you as telling me the truth. And as the poll numbers you mentioned, that's why they're going in our direction, in President Trump's direction, because we're right on the policy.
Let's turn to free trade, fair trade, reciprocal trade, which the president has pushed and is now is getting the world's attention. We see Europe moving in the direction of the Trump administration on this issue. Balanced trade should be that the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, every major regional association, whether it's ASEAN, whether it is the European Union, which is a little more than an association now, despite what's happening with Brexit. I mean, this is a world that needs balanced trade. And I think most Americans would be stunned to know how little is in the arsenal of the president in order to demand and follow through on balanced trade.
That's right. And this is something you've talked about a lot as well, Lou. So the president doesn't have the greatest tools to make sure that we have not just free trade, but fair trade. So this Thursday, I'm going to drop a Reciprocal Trade Act, which is going to allow the president to say, okay, Europe, you have a 10% tariff on our autos, and we only have a 2.5% tariff on your autos. We're going to give the president the authority to raise our tariff to 10% to match the European auto. Once they theirs, the president can reduce those tariffs as well. With butter, I produce a lot of butter in my district. There's a 68% tariff in Europe on Wisconsin butter. In America, we have a 3.8% tariff when they import it. It's more than 200 than the American tariff. So we want to not just have free trade, we want to make it fair. And we're trying to give the president the tools to make sure that we're not robbed anymore. But like you've always talked about, Lou, and so is the president, this is about the American worker. Let's make sure we products and sell them around the world without one hand tied behind our back, instead of letting the rest of the world block us because of their tariffs, and then come to our markets and sell and compete against our workers. It's absolutely unfair, and so we're going to the president necessary to not just fight, but win the war for the American worker.
So I've got to ask this. Where are the Koch brothers? Where is the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, and Wall Street? I'm sure they're excited about Congressman Duffy forward the Reciprocal Trade Act.
Yeah, so the Chamber of Commerce came out and tried to sandbag this movement to give the president more tools, basically saying we're just trying to raise tariffs. We're not. By the way, this gets us further away from tariff war and brings us to tariff peace. We don't want tariffs, Lou, because if we have fair trade and free trade, the American worker, the American manufacturer will win. And sometimes I think some of these organizations, they just care about selling stuff. They don't make it stuff where our families and our Americans work.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, you may not like tariffs or may not even want them right now. But we sure as hell want this president to have the power to raise tariffs on countries that treat them accustomed to over the last 30 years under previous administrations who let them, play us for fools.
And hey, Lou, if I can make one pitch, if your listeners want to call the member of Congress and say, hey, on this bill, give the president the authority and the tools necessary to win this fight for America, that would be great.
I think they heard you loud and clear, and I'm sure we'll oblige. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Hey,
thanks so much. Congressman Sean Duffy. Hi, Mitt Romney, that's right, Senator Romney now, actually had the temerity to, counsel President Trump, admonishing him over his July 2018 meeting with Romney calling it inappropriate for the president to talk with Putin without careful records. Romney is now fashioning himself as some sort of, nuisance. He is committed to this role. Frankly, he is, well, as I've said a number of times, lower than a snake's belly, and I can't imagine what the people of Utah were thinking when they sent him to the nation capital. Next, 1,000 Central American migrants on their way again to the United States, coming up from Mexico. They're Hondurans. They've reached the toward ours. Investigative journalist Sarah Carter joins us next. We'll have more. But before we go to break, please, a quick look at the national debt, moving toward $22 trillion. Hoping to reach our border with Mexico, unlike thousands of migrants from last year's caravan, they camped out and remain camped out in shelters in and around Tijuana. President Trump today reacting to the new caravan. He tweeted this, quote, "A big new caravan is heading up to our southern border from Honduras. Tell Nancy and Chuck that a drone flying around will not stop them. Only a wall will work. Only a wall or steel barrier will keep our country safe. Stop playing political games and end the shutdown." It's now day 25 of that shutdown. President Trump continues to fight for the $5.7 billion to secure our southern border, and make no mistake, walls do work, and other countries all across the world are using them, battling their own influx of migrants or to stave off terrorists. Currently, there are 65 countries that have completed or have walls under construction. Only 16 countries had walls at the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall. In total, there are at least 77 walls or barriers built worldwide. 45 countries have proposals to build border walls. And since 2015, more than 800 miles of barriers have been built in Europe. In other words, walls work. We'd like to hear your thoughts about the president's push for a border wall. Share your thoughts. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook and follow me at Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Joining us now, Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, a fellow with the Independent Women's Forum and Fox Business contributor. Sarah, good to have you with us. Your thoughts?
Great to be with you. Your
thoughts about, first, the wall. We are looking at empirical evidence of every kind. We're told by Border Patrol, by Customs, by everyone that walls work. They want the wall. We look around, there are 65 nations that have built them. The walls work. And yet Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are deniers. It's extraordinary.
They're deniers based on politics. This is all political for them. This isn't about national security. Let me give you one example.
So they don't care about the country whatsoever.
Well, absolutely. At this point, they're denying what is blatantly in our face, statistics about people crossing the border. Let me just give you one example. Sure. I was in McAllen, Texas last week. I went down there to report from the border. I was in a particular area near the Rio Grande Valley sector that's patrolled quite often by Border Patrol. But remember, their resources are slim, so they have Border Patrol scattered throughout the area.
Busiest sector for the Border Patrol.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Heavy sector, heavy traffic flows. I was sitting on private property of a Texan who owns land there right near the Rio Grande Valley, and across the border, here come two men crossing the Rio Grande River, coming up the road. I went up to them. I was speaking to them in Spanish. They had no idea what I was saying, so I realized at that point they did not speak Spanish. I asked them if they spoke any English. They said a little. I asked them where they were from. They were from Bangladesh. These two men had been trafficked all the way from Bangladesh through Dubai to Brazil with other AAs. These are special interest aliens. And the reason that the DHS qualifies them as that, and it was qualified under the Obama administration as well, is because Bangladesh has issues with Al-Qaeda as well as Islamic State. So within 15 minutes of me sitting right there in a desolate area of the Rio Grande Valley sector, two men from Bangladesh cross the border, and they're talking to me. They have no identifiers on them. They have no backpacks. They're coming to turn themselves in.
Sarah, you've been covering the border for a long as many of us. The idea that the President of the United States has to explain to the American people why a wall is necessary, why it is critically important that we stop the export from Mexico to our country, the deadliest drugs in the world, whether it's methamphetamine, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, are fentanyl. I mean, we're looking at weapons of mass destruction without any question. And yet Schumer, the radical Dems are indifferent to the deaths that occur every year, 70,000 of them from opioid and synthetic opiates in this country. What in the world is wrong with this country that we have to explain to people, you know, you really need to protect yourselves and your border and your nation?
Well, it's unconscionable what the drug cartels, as well as the criminal trafficking organizations, have done not only to our country, but to the people that they're trafficking and the threat that they pose to our entire hemisphere. I think this is the first time we have a president, at least so far as I've been covering since the Bush administration, a president who is willing to do the right thing, a president that is willing to put his money where his mouth is and say, look, I am here to protect this country. That is my duty as commander-in-chief. I'm here to protect the United States. A border is necessary. A border wall is necessary. We're a sovereign nation. We have a right to do this. And this is the reason why William Barr, during his testimony today, was so accurate when he said, look, we need to change some of these laws. They have figured out our loopholes. They're claiming asylum, incredible fear, and we have people just pouring across the border, and we don't always know who they are. Remember, we only know about the people we catch, not about the people we don't catch.
And obviously, one of the most absurd and tragic loopholes is that a MS-13 gang member traveling with a child has to be brought into this country right now under existing immigration law. It's madness itself. Sarah Carter,
it truly is.
Always great to see you. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Lou.
Sarah Carter. British Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal blew up today, failing in a parliamentary vote, voting 432 to 202 to reject her deal. Opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn calling for a vote of no confidence tomorrow. If May survives, she has until Monday to come up with an alternative. If she doesn't, it looks like they'll have to have a plan B. Up next, an Obama-era judge blocking the Trump administration. A judge ruling that the Commerce Department census can't ask a question about citizenship. We'll take up this latest act of judicial activism. Attorneys Harmeet Dillon and Greg Jarrett join me right after the break. And we'll talk about who appointed this judge. It's really quite a coincidence. Stay with us. President Trump will not answer any more questions from special counsel Robert Mueller. Fox News has learned Mueller had follow-up questions for the president shortly after Mr. Trump had submitted his written answers back in November. Trump's legal team replying that the president would not answer any more questions written, in person, or in any way directed toward the president. Obama appointed district judge Jesse Furman blocking the Trump administration from asking about citizenship on the 2020 census. Now get ready for this. This is the first time in American history that a federal court has ruled that the federal government cannot ask a question on the census. I repeat, it's unprecedented. It has never happened before. Courts have routinely rejected challenges to questions on the census. And joining us now, Harmeet Dillon, the Dillon Law Group managing partner, a board member of the Republican National Lawyers Association, and RNC committeewoman for the great state of California. Great to have you here, or have you there, but with us on the broadcast. Greg Jarrett, Fox Business legal analyst. Good to have you both here. Let's start, Harmeet. This Obama-appointed judge, it seems to me on the face of it, just as a layman, is out of his tree to even think about policing what will be on a census. Can we know too much about the American people?
Not at all, Lou. And I found this opinion, which I'm still trying to comprehend, very, very puzzling and frankly totally wrong. For one thing, this question has been asked, many times through the middle of the 20th century rather, in our country, and it's a question that has relevance to a number of things, including for one argument, the Voting Rights Act, compliance with the Voting Rights Act,
which was a response of the Commerce Department on
right. Exactly, and liberals don't want this question asked because their
goodness, then we shouldn't ask. We shouldn't ask if liberals.
Yeah. Well, their reasoning is if you ask this question, a lot of people will simply refuse to fill out the census, which will in turn affect redistricting.
Oh, well.
But that's really irrelevant. And what this judge went out of his way to do was really look at what conversations Wilbur Ross had with people, and then use that against him.
What do you think?
So
the question doesn't ask your legal status; it asks your citizenship. And the law forbids it for being used for any purpose other than statistical analysis, which means it can't be used for immigration enforcement.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if we wanted to use data for immigration enforcement, we could correlate Social Security numbers and data with IRS data,
yeah.
And we would have a treasure trove, the mother lode of immigration data. So the government is ethical and has integrity and has never crossed that line.
It's used in part to draw congressional districts to ensure that voters are properly represented, not non-voters. That's just one of the reasons to use it.
I don't let you attorneys off the hook here. Here we have another activist judge, a judicial system that is absolutely, it is a disaster. You can't get a court date. You have to have years, not months, in order to move toward a trial and get a decision, whether it's civil or criminal. And we've got activist judges telling the government how to operate.
Yeah, there are too many people on the federal bench and elsewhere who are driven by personal animus and political bias. They don't like this president, so they try to find a way to defeat him in their own little fiefdom, their courtroom. And, if this goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, the president is going to win. They already ruled 3 months ago that Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, doesn't have to testify about his reasons for doing that which he's entitled to do. And by the way, this question has been asked in one form or another for roughly 200 years. It was Obama who stopped the practice. This president.
Say Obama.
Pardon me?
Say Obama again.
Obama. Barack Obama. You remember him?
Dimly, but only dimly.
All right.
Harmeet, you get the last word here.
Yeah, I think this is a very legitimate opinion. It shows personal animus towards the witnesses before the court, and I do think that Greg is correct. It'll ultimately be overturned by the Supreme Court, if not earlier.
All right. Well, I lied. You get the last word. Quick.
I do?
Yeah.
How quick do you want it? This is,
we're done.
You're absolutely right. An activist judge. And the great thing about the president's 2 Supreme Court appointments, he's balancing it out.
All right. Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you, Harmeet. Appreciate you both being here.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you. The Senate advancing a Democratic resolution that would block easing U.S. sanctions against 3 Russian companies with ties to Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. The proposal, led by Senator Schumer, passed in the Senate 57 to 42. 11 Republicans, including good old Marco Rubio, Joe Kennedy, Susan Collins, and others, siding with Schumer and voting in favor of his measure. The debate begins. Up next, J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon. I think he wants to be a politician. But first, he really needs to get that bank under control, and then we might pay a little more attention. We'll have that and more on the confirmation hearing of William Barr. Republican strategist Amy Tarkanian joins me here next. Stay with us. On Wall Street, stocks closing higher. The Dow up 156 points, the S&P up 28, the Nasdaq up 118. Volume on the big board, relatively light trading, 3.6 billion shares. Crude oil closing relatively flat to nearly $52 a barrel. Gold, silver, copper, all just about even on the day. Jamie Dimon believes U.S. economic growth could be reduced to 0 if the government shutdown goes on. Jamie Dimon, though, might be paying more attention to his own company maybe hitting earnings targets and, take a little break from politics. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Joining me now, Republican strategist, former chair of the Nevada Republican Party, Amy Tarkarian. Good grief. Good to see you.
It's a mouthful, Tarkanian.
I apologize.
No worries.
Let me start with, first of all, the party right now. There is such a contest in the party. There is a quiet that's settled over all of the rhinos since the midterm elections, it seems. They're not being aggressively supporting the president. We're watching this president stand with that express embrace from the leadership in either the Senate or the House. Kevin McCarthy has been certainly better than McConnell. But this is a peculiar time, and Ronna McDaniel, the head of the RNC, has been supportive. But there is not a real expression of unity that I certainly see on the part of the party for this president, who is doing the Lord's work, securing the nation, actually rolling back the disasters and the mistakes of 3 previous administrations.
He's doing a phenomenal job, and I think that the so-called rhinos, they're finally seeing that they have been on the wrong side for a very long time and feeling the heat. The general public has probably spoken up pretty loudly. I know that a number of people that I know have been putting in numerous phone calls into their congressional leaders or senators to put the pressure on them to actually stand firm with the president with this government shutdown. I have plenty of friends who are actually feeling, they're feeling it in the checkbook. They're having to ask parents and grandparents to help financially, but they do understand that if the Republicans don't stand firm with the president, then our nation's going to be at a loss. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to recover.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, because if this president does not persist in the trade dispute with China, seeking balance, I mean, we're talking $330 billion in a record trade deficit with China, even as this president is trying to bring to bear all of the tools at his disposal to reach balanced trade, because we can't continue to permit $600 billion in Chinese theft of our intellectual property, our technology. This is madness. And he's the only president in 30 years who's had the guts to challenge the Chinese. It's remarkable.
Yeah. It really is, and it's exciting to have a fighter like President Trump finally in the White House. So it's going to be imperative that we have leaders such as Senator McConnell and also Kevin McCarthy stand side by side with him, because it's absolutely asinine to sit there and watch Senator Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and other leaders in the Democrat Party stand there and actually stare and look into the camera and look into the eyes of the American public and bold-faced lie constantly just because they do not like our president.
They do not like the president. They intend to, and have from the outset, attempt to delegitimize him. They do so now as they absolutely are driving towards subversion of this president, whether it is on free trade and fair trade and balanced trade and reciprocal trade. I mean, Vice President Pence put it this way, talking about Wall Street. They're unregistered foreign agents lobbying against the President of the United States in support of China. We're watching the national left-wing media talk about collusion. These outlets have been as pro-Russian in the division and the dissension that they sow as any operative could possibly be working for Vladimir Putin.
I mean, if you want to talk about collusion, really, it's the majority of the mass media with the Democrat Party. There's your collusion. And it's a shame, because once again, we are moving in the right direction. I mean, we have unemployment at an all-time low in the last 50 years. We've got, like you said, we're finally in conversations with China. We've done so well in so many areas. And North Korea, absolutely. It's a shame that we've got the other side willing to dig their heels in and make a mockery of the American public just to spite the president.
Amy Tarkanian, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, the radical left refusing to negotiate with the president on border security, then national security. We take up all that is, all of the choices that are before him right after these quick messages. Stay with us.